All right, so today we are reviewing the Pythagorean Theorem, working on practicing our perfect squares as well as taking the square root of a number and applying this Pythagorean Theorem. Many of you know what the Pythagorean Theorem is from maybe last year or just having to work with it in the past this year, but let's officially review it for the end of the year here. First thing, we want to say that what we even use this Pythagorean Theorem for. Well, the Pythagorean Theorem is used to find the missing side of a right triangle. So remember, a right triangle means that one of its angles is 90 degrees. This only works if we have a triangle with 90 degrees as one of its angles. And we say that side A and B are called the legs. They are two sides of the triangle that really make a difference in the triangle, but they're not our special side. The special side we have is side C right here. It's the side opposite of my right angle. We can draw an arrow through that right angle measure, and this is called the hypotenuse. And for any right triangle, we can use the equation of a squared plus b squared, our two legs, squared and then added, equals c squared. So let's try applying this equation or this theorem in for a couple of triangles. So I've got a few examples here for you, and the directions say that we want to find x rounding to the nearest tenth. So let's do just 1 and 3 here, and then we'll try out a couple of other problems as well. So for question number 1, we have side 8, 13, and x. Well, the first thing we need to do is figure out which of these is going to be the hypotenuse. So I need to know where this right angle is, and it's going to be the side that is opposite. My right angle's corner here points to the direction of the hypotenuse, which is the side x. So that means that this here, x is my hypotenuse. We'll just put an h over there for hypotenuse. And we'll write out the theorem by plugging in these here numbers. So we have 8 as one side squared, the other side is 13 squared, and then our hypotenuse squared. So 8 squared plus 13 squared equals x squared. Well, squaring these two things, we would get 64 plus 169 equals x squared. Now we can add these two together, so we would get 233 equals x squared. Now we need to do something important here by taking the square root of both sides. So to undo a square, we've talked about how the opposite of squaring is the square root. So we're going to take the square root of both sides. And you can use your calculator, whether or not you have the calculator app I've told you to download, or you just have your own calculator, whatever it might be. We'll take 233 and the square root of that. Now, if you have a calculator like mine, you'll need to use the second function and then the square root where this x squared button is. You'll notice in the yellow right there, there's a little square root sign. And then 233, close off our parentheses, and we get the square root is 15.264, yada, 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 but we only want to round to the nearest tenth. So that means that we're going to round to the first decimal point, and this 6 is going to round up our 2. So we'll have a final answer of 15.3 for x. All right, problem 1 down. Let's jump down to problem number 3 now. So again, we have our right triangle. There's our right angle. And we have sides 7, 9, and x. And we need to figure out which one is the hypotenuse. Well, we take the side opposite of our right angle. Across from that is going to be our hypotenuse, which in this case is 9. So that tells me x is just one of the sides of our triangle. So we could say x squared plus 7 squared equals 9 squared, just based off of what our theorem tells us and where the legs are on our triangle. So let's start solving for this by squaring what we can. We'll still have x squared plus 7 squared, which will give me 49, and 9 squared, which will give me 81. Now, this time, though, my numbers are on the opposite sides of the equal sign from each other. And x squared is what I'm trying to solve for. So I need to subtract 49 to get x by itself. So we'll have x squared equals 81 minus 49, which will give me 32. And again, we said the opposite of something squared is to take the square root. Taking the square root of both those sides, we get x equals, well, in our calculators again here, I have to do second square root, which is the x squared button, 32. And that will give me 5.6568, yada, yada, yada. I only need to round to the nearest tenth, which is this 0.6, and 5 will round that up to a 0.7. So we get x is 5.7. Now, something quick to note about these first two problems. I know right off the bat that these seem like reasonable numbers. And the reason that is my hypotenuse needs to be the longest side. So the hypotenuse is the longest side. That's because our 90-degree angle needs to be the biggest angle in our triangle in order for these to actually be a triangle. Since it's the biggest angle is opposite of the side the hypotenuse is going to be the longest leg. So the biggest goes with the biggest, smallest goes with the smallest. So if we look back at question number 1, we got 15.3 for our hypotenuse, which is bigger than 13 and 8. If we go down to question 3, 9 was our hypotenuse, so x needed to be smaller than that, which ended up being 5.7. It's just an easy way for you to check and make sure that you're doing these problems the right way. Let's move on to looking at a couple more examples. All right, so the next couple of examples we're going to look at just one word problem. If you wanted to try out any of these other word problems, see how you're doing on those before starting with the Delta Math assignment for today, I will be posting the key to this on our Schoology page, so you can try out any of these. I'm actually going to do number 12 because I enjoy running, and that's exactly what this problem talks about. So the problem reads, Ashley jogged 3.4 miles east, then 5.7 miles south. How far is Ashley from her starting point? So the first thing we need to do is figure out which direction is which. Well, if we think about how a compass works, normally we would write north as towards the top of our page, south towards the bottom of our page, and then east and west fill in between there. So I don't know what you use for your acronyms, but I like to use never eat soggy waffles. Soggy waffles are just gross, right? Never eat soggy waffles is how I remember northeast, southwest. And so I'm going to use this to figure out where Ashley went. Well, let's have our starting point. This is where Ashley started. So I'll put a little A there for Ashley. And we know that she traveled 3.4 miles east. Well, east is to the right on our paper. So we'll say a little arrow here with 3.4 east. Then after she went 3.4 miles east, she went 5.7 miles south. So instead of going any more left or right, we know south was down. So we'll say that she went 5.7 south. Now, we want to know how far she is from her starting point. In other words, the distance from where she started to where she is after her run. So we're trying to find this x right here. Now, some of you might be able to see the little triangle we have here. I know that we went straight right and then straight down, which gives me this nice little right edge here. Since this is going to be my right side, I know the side opposite of that is my hypotenuse. And we can use the Pythagorean Theorem then, because this would be a right angle and a hypotenuse that I'm trying to find. So we'll take our hypotenuse x as x squared equals 3.4 squared plus 5.7 squared. I don't know those quite off the top of my head like I would like to, so I'm going to take out my calculator again. and I'll take 3.4, 4, and this time I can just hit the square button as it is, plus 5.7 squared. I don't need to do these in multiple steps. I know what I'm going to do. I can type this whole phrase in. I get 44.05 x squared equals 44.05. And again, I need to take the square root of both sides to get x by itself. So square root of both sides. X equals, now I'm going to show you another little trick. We'll do our second square root again. And to get our last answer in here, if I don't want to type in the whole thing, you'll notice right above our little negative sign here is the ANS. That actually puts in the answer that we got last time. So if I do second minus button, and I get 6.637, just to show you that that would be the same thing, we'll do second square root of 44.05, and we get the exact same thing. So just a quick little easy way for you to be able to use the numbers as you're going through in your calculator, save you a couple steps. Either way, we want to round to the nearest tenth on our answer here, so we're going to have an answer of 6.6, and don't forget to label your units of miles. All right. Now, again, you can do any of these examples if you would like to. I'm going to be uploading the key to this whole page, so whether it was the examples on the front side of this or the back side here for some of our word problems, you'll be able to test out any of these that you would like to. Remember, if you have any questions, to send me an email, a message, let me know, and I would be more than happy to help. See you next time.